The Star of Greenwich is a community-owned pub in Greenwich, in London, and really the aim of it is to be a place where people meet one another, meet people they wouldn't maybe normally run into in their day-to-day lives. So the line we use a lot is that we're trying to be the most inclusive pub in London, and that means we do just as much stuff and work in the community as we do selling drinks, really. So we have a lot of charities that use the space for various things. So like English Fraction, a local charity that run free classes for people to learn English. Often people that have recently come to the country. Learning English is obviously a really important way to get people into, society and all the rest of it. And it's a really big barrier. It's super expensive. So yeah, English Reaction use the space to help people with that. We have we do a lot of work with families and with kids. So we have a stay and play that runs out of the pub for almost all of the week, and lots of kids parties at the weekend and everything. We do a lot of work with a charity called Plateful Cafe, who we don't do food all the time, but when we do food, they're the ones that pop up and do it. They again work with refugees to help get them into the catering industry, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, as I say, it's a pub, but it's as much a community hub as anything really. And that's what we're aiming for.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like kind of helping people is at the crux of what you do as well, and then like you renting your space out and stuff like that. Yeah. So what's been your favourite kind of charity maybe not favourite charity, but what's been your favourite kind of event or favourite thing to put on?
I think we have some great nights in the pub where, you've got so many different parts of the local community that are coming together. We'll often have what I often talk about is people who maybe are working, 35-year-olds who are working in the city, sat chatting to students, sat chatting to guys who are working on the railway, sat chatting to someone who's been coming to the pub since the 50s.
Yeah.
But seeing those kind of conversations happen and those relationships build up, I think is just hugely important for the neighbourhood. It helps make it a more enjoyable place to live. It helps people to find out about things they wouldn't necessarily hear about. How often do you speak to someone who's older than you if it's not in a family setting? It's very rare. So I think pubs in the UK, in London in particular, have a real specific opportunity when it comes to that kind of thing, and that's definitely my favourite stuff. And obviously when we have things like folk music in and bands and all that kind of stuff, again, it brings another reason for people to come in. Had a great big Halloween party last year, which was really cool. But that's on the kind of pub side. But then when you see, English Reaction coming in, using the space because it's set up for kids, they will bring in a lot of families with them, and the kids are able to come and engage. And the kids are able to be safe in the space. And that means that the parents, often the mums, are able to come to a class that they would otherwise kind of struggle to get to. So the fact that we can provide that space in the community is, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's really valuable. So what do you think has been your biggest achievement as a business? Do you think it links into what you were just talking about?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's that when we get those relationships that wouldn't happen otherwise because of what we've started, that's for me what I find most exciting. There's a couple called Liz and Phil who, have made friends with Don. They both work in the city up in Canary Wharf. Don I think he's 90 and lives across the road and literally has been going to the Star for his whole life. And the fact that they're now they're genuine friends, to go out for dinner and stuff, even outside the pub, things like that. Like, it's just, that relationship would never have happened. And all of that, I think, scales up to something that's, really, really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. On the other hand, what do you think has been your biggest struggle so far?
I think there's so many barriers in place for any small organization getting off the ground, especially when it's, most of the people that run the Star are volunteers. So, that's a particular challenge. How do you fit that in between your day jobs, between your families, between everything else? It's great when it works, but there's plenty of hurdles to overcome when it doesn't, whether it's local regulation or, tax and, all of the kind of systemic stuff, which doesn't care if you're a volunteer-led run organisation or not. It's just learning to deal with all of them in a compressed time period without a lot of money That's probably the hard stuff.
Okay. And then like in regards to kind of the cost of living crisis and the energy crisis and stuff like that, have
Yeah.
you had to maybe like scale back some events or like think about maybe your suppliers and what you're spending on, or is there any specific ways that you've kind of like tried to lower your energy or lower like your spending at all?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of energy use, we've installed some kit. So obviously we have a big cellar. Keeping that cool is the bigger, it costs a lot of money. We've got some kit through Heineken, who supply a lot of our beer, called a smart cellar sort of manager. So it basically regulates the temperature in there. So it means you can have the stuff on and off as opposed to just on constantly. So those kind of technology solutions are really handy. It's a very old building and it's quite complicated in terms of the lease and the connections, it seems. So, shopping around for suppliers has actually been very difficult. We had done it, we had actually done it for yourselves, but then we weren't able to make it actually happen because it was a traditional British gas lease and all that kind of stuff. So some of those kind of things, again, those barriers are just, it's really frustrating, to be honest. That there's only so much you can do, even if you've got all the time
Yeah.
and will in the world. Some of these things are just stacked against you, it seems, at times.
Okay. And then so like moving back to the start of your business journey,
Yeah.
did you think that there was enough information, like practical information for you to know how to start a business, or would you like what would you have liked to have known more about, do you think?
Yeah, so the stuff that's been really helpful has actually been the communities of practice that we've become a part of.
Yeah.
So through the community pubs network, there's lots of different places, lots of different people. So, through some of the more formal charities like the Plunkett Foundation and Co-ops UK, just every answer to every question is totally dependent on your context, right? So no one can really give you an answer without paying them thousands of pounds for them to understand all of that kind of stuff. So the most valuable stuff to have to us has just been about having someone we can go and talk to, and that's been the stuff that's been really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it kind of links into that community again, doesn't it? Like that's another community that you're part of as well.
Yeah, it's all about people. All of this stuff is all about
Yeah.
people, and people really help other people,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
that's what we've been trying to make the most of, I suppose.
Okay. So what's your all-time favorite thing about running your pub, do you think?
Um, so my favorite thing, well, it's tricky, right? My favorite thing about running the pub is, we get to put on some really cool, fun events where, no, so basically, it's the marathon weekend in London. So it was actually the first weekend we were open, and it'll be our first birthday party in a couple of weeks. And it is a day where you have the whole community there. I mean, literally hundreds of people, kids, families, people, Don, Pat, the guys who have drunk in the pub for 50 years. Everyone else will come. They'll see the route runs down the road next to us, basically. This year we're going to try and have some pop-up food on as well. Like, just that
Awesome.
kind of sense of community, especially in London. It doesn't happen very often. It really doesn't. Like, the only other place I see it is at our kids' school, which is great because we're very lucky to have kids in a primary school. But
Yeah.
there's loads of people that don't. And there's loads of people that don't really feel like they live in a place. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like that. We can create more community infrastructure if we want to.
Yeah.
And so, I think days like that are just, so cool. Like, it's a lot of fun to be a part of. It's a real privilege to be a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, I think a lot of people get kind of caught up in their own everyday lives and then they forget
Yeah.
to be part of something and to get to know their neighbours and the people that they
And
live
so,
around and stuff.
absolutely, but there's lots of barriers to that as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if you don't speak English, it's not your first language, or you're not particularly extroverted as a person. It can feel like a really hard thing to get over, put yourself in that
Mm.
position. So I think places like, there's this whole theory of third places, which is like quite, it's across the whole world, and different parts of the world have different third places. So the idea is that it's somewhere that isn't home and isn't work, but it's somewhere that you can go and feel welcome, and it's usually
Yeah.
fun, and somewhere that you want to go. And in Paris, it's cafes. In Brazil, it's barber shops. And in the UK, it's traditionally been pubs. But I think you probably have less and less of those places where it doesn't feel either very expensive to be in there, or that it's kind of targeted at a very particular group, And if you're not in that group, you don't feel very welcome.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to be everything to all people, which as a marketing plan is broadly the worst marketing plan you can have in the world. But as the service we're trying to provide the community, that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to be a business, really, in lots of ways. We're just trying to help the community and have an impact in the community. And yeah, that's the best stuff about it by a mile.
Yeah, amazing. So you obviously sound very passionate about your job and everything, but like on your down days, for example, like how do you keep yourself motivated, or like how do you keep your staff motivated as well?
Yeah, good question. You know, there are, for all of the high-minded, lovely, fun stuff we get to do, there's still lots of little operational things to work out in the pub. Um, and yeah, it varies. I think there's no one answer for each person. Some people are more excited and interested in the bigger community things. Some people just want some of the things that they find difficult about their day-to-day job
Yeah.
a bit easier. But again, it kind of comes back to people. It's all about talking to each other, understanding what other people need, being curious about what they need, and trying to work that through. For them and for yourself as well. Like, you know, if you are finding something difficult, asking yourself, why is that? What is
Yeah.
it really about? Because it's usually not about the thing right in front of you. It's usually about something else to do with yourself.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And then like in the future, so do you have plans to kind of expand or take on more staff, or like what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, so we're in the process of having really putting together a big funding bid to try and purchase the whole property. So at the moment we're just on a lease, a 3-year lease, and we would like to purchase property so that we can renovate the upstairs. At the minute we're only able to use half the property really, and so that obviously really limits the sustainability of everything. So we are trying to purchase it, and then that will allow us to put in a whole bunch of things upstairs. At the moment everything's downstairs basically, and so we will put in an Airbnb flat to help with a bit of kind of income and that kind of thing, or short-term let, I should say. And then we'll put in 4 community co-working and charity office spaces that we can, again, sort of increase our impact in the local community through one of the suggestions that's actually come through to us through Playful Cafe, working with a lot of refugees. They talk a lot about how they're actually often looking to get into kind of the health and beauty industries.
Yeah.
So creating a space that is easy, whether it's a barber's chair or nail bars or stuff like that, where they can start to get into that industry would really help. So those kind of ideas are the ones that we're really excited about moving forward. That'll then allow us, the pub, to be a bit more sustainable and easy to run, and whilst also increasing the impact of of everything that we can do.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. That sounds great. And then like in regards to your marketing, do you I know you said you've got like a lot of customers that come and they've been coming for like 50 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But is it word of mouth that you use for your marketing, or is it social media or something else?
Yeah, we do a lot of social media work, and we also have an email list. So Instagram tends to be our most kind of important channel, or the most followed channel. We also use Facebook as well. We've got a Facebook group set up for the kind of perhaps even more hardcore groups of people. And yeah, we try and get a combination of all of those going. Again, it's very difficult when everyone who's doing that side of things is all volunteers. So, you know, it's kind of good fun to begin with, and then a year in on your 200th Instagram post, it's sort of a little bit of a challenge, as someone who works in content, I'm sure, appreciates. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we do. And again, we're very lucky. We've had quite a lot of press interest as well. So we were on the BBC around Christmas, and we've had like articles everywhere from the BBC to the local papers to like the LA Times came down and did an article like a couple of months ago. So those kind of things as well help to get it out into the local consciousness, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. That's kind of like
Yeah.
you've spanned over the pond now. That's great.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like so I think it seems to be once you get on the BBC, everyone kind of like just sees you, like when they Google something, you sort of end up there. So we even got into the Cathay Pacific, like flight magazine,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
in-flight
wow.
magazine, which is just totally weird. Like the fact that someone's flying over Shanghai whilst they're reading about the Star of Greenwich seems a bit nuts,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's good fun.
That's really good though. Wow, well done.
Oh, thanks.
So like with all that in mind, if you could give somebody some advice when starting their own business, what would you say to them, do you think?
Get more people involved than you think you're going to need. Like, you know, you think you can do it all yourself, you can't, especially in our context around volunteering and all the rest of it. But the more people involved, the more diverse the ideas, the more like diverse the approaches to stuff, the better. So all the way from our funding that we did originally, so we started off with some crowdfunding. The fact that we're all from quite different communities really helped, more people get involved in that. The fact that, so it's myself, Lisa, and Kirsty who run the pub and have been, got everything going from the beginning. And we're all from quite different backgrounds. And that means that the pub itself and the work that we do is better because it takes into account all of those different points of view. And that's not, to say sometimes there aren't difficulties because we disagree on things, but ultimately the decisions we make are better because they've got lots of different points of view in it. So I really think,
yeah,
that's the key, to be honest.
Okay. And why do you think it's better to support like your local pub rather than go to, I don't know, Weatherspoons or something like that?
Well, I think Weatherspoons has its place and, can actually be like, really interesting parts of the community. But I think the thing for me is I think it's less about being a pub and more about being a hub where people can come and meet people they wouldn't normally do so, where everyone can feel welcome. I think that does tend to happen in a community-owned pub rather than a kind of more commercially minded sort of place where people are not exclusively, but where there's a little bit more of a drive to kind of get people in, get them drinks and get them out, get them food, get them out kind of thing. That's, if you come and don't have anything to drink with us for a couple of hours, you're still very welcome. If you come and nurse a pint for 4 hours, you're extremely welcome. If you're here for a kids' party, here for an English class, here for the life drawing, whatever it might be, everyone's welcome. So I think that's a slightly different vibe to what you might get in other more commercially driven places.
Yeah, definitely. And then finally, if you could go back to the start of your business journey, do you think you would change anything, or are you happy with everything, like how it went and everything?
Good question. So if I went back to the start of my business journey, there's definitely some things that we've learned around the technical side of stuff, or maybe suppliers, whether it's electric, gas, some of the HMRC tax stuff. I think I'd probably plan that in a little bit more. We've ended up in where we probably would have ended up, but would have just been nice to know some of those kind of decisions that we've made and the impact of them. But yeah, broadly, I don't think we could be in any better place than we are. Again, that's not to say we don't have our challenges, but I kind of feel because we've got such a broad range of people involved helping us along and helping us get to where we are, then we sort of got to where we should be, if that makes sense.